We move. We really, really move. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rum Shot Diaries Cuss Out Sessions. My name is Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And I haven't done one of these since the 19th of August, 2021. So nearly 2 months ago since I last did a cuss out session. A lot's happened since then. Some breaking news about what may or may not happen with the future of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. But you know what? I'm back. I'm back, and I'm back to deliver a cuss out. You can see the title below underneath on the YouTube title itself, that this is about the Chris Gayle versus Curtly Ambrose drama that has been reported on the whole of this last week. And it was too big a story for me to not just jump in. It was too big a story for me to not have to say something and not have to and not address what's been going on in the fake war between the media back home and the Cricket West Indies, so to speak. But let's get into it. And in fact, actually, before I start, on the screen below, hopefully you can see the banner line where I said where you can support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. If you are a fan of what we do try and support us. We've put out some news recently that we may be shutting down operations at Caribbean Cricket Podcast because financially it's proving a lot to keep things going. So if you do like our content, if you do like what we do, by all means feel free to support. You don't have to, but if you want to, by all means feel free to support. But anyways, that's that. Let me get straight into this. But you know how I'm going to get into this Chris Gayle thing? Let me get into it by first and foremost talking on, in fact, no, you know what? Here's a quote. I'm going to read out something from, this is circa February the 4th, 2021. Let me just read it to you verbatim. During the most recent Mason and Guest radio program, Jason Holder responded to those criticisms from Andy Roberts and described those legendary players who are more than often critical of West Indies cricket as hard to approach. Holder also admitted that the West Indies have not performed well compared to the glory days when the legendary players dominated. Now here's the quote from Jason Holder. My disappointment with people like Andy Roberts, I respect them for what they contributed to the game. But as former players who have done so well, I am sure they have positive contributions to make to West Indies cricket. But why go on these platforms, I think he was talking about the radio, and constantly criticise and degrade the product of West Indies cricket, Holder asked. I feel the former legends' comments on West Indies cricket 99% of the time are negative. And when there is an opportunity for them to give encouragement or congratulate players, it's like they're trying to pick their teeth to find the words. It's like a hard thing to do for them. As a society in the Caribbean, we find it so easy to criticize. And we always know the problem. But when asked the solution, it's mind-boggling. These people always struggle to find the solutions, Holder said. Further, Holder added, everyone is entitled to their opinions. And the legends, whom I respect for their contribution, I think they can do a lot more opening up that relationship with their players. But lots of players frown upon speaking to the legends because they are not approachable and always critical. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jason Holder at the start of this year talking about the legends, the past players. And he was using Andy Roberts as the exemplar of what he was talking about. Does anyone remember what happened after Jason Holder said that? Nothing. Let me repeat that again. Do you remember what happened to Jason Holder in the press and from the fans and from the great players in West Indies cricket when he said that? Did anyone come out and cuss him off and say, disgraceful? This is what's wrong with West Indies cricket. This is an example of what's wrong with West Indies cricket. This is vulgar. Did anyone say that? Nobody said anything. Now, none of this is a dig at Jason Holder, because let me tell you something right now. Jason Holder was 10,000% correct in everything he said. back in February at the top of this year. 10,000% correct. Nobody said anything to Jason Holder. But do you know why they actually didn't say anything to Jason Holder? Because Jason is more respected in West Indies cricket than Chris Gayle. Jason can put things better and word things better than Chris Gayle. But the sentiment of what Jason Holder was saying was the exact same as Chris Gayle. When you read if you were listening properly to what I just said from that statement that Jason Holder made back in Feb, he was basically cussing out the senior player, the past players, and saying, "You lot don't help. You lot are negative. All you lot do is criticize and lambast and talk about how we're no good, and you look for all the negatives in our cricket." But Jason even coaxed the whole thing by saying, "We know we're not as good as you lot were, but come try be a little bit positive." Nobody criticized Jason for what he said. We fast forward to earlier this week, and Chris Gayle went on a show in St. Kitts. I always forget the name. Early Morning, is it? Early Morning, or early Eat Local with Chris Gayle. And Chris Gayle went on that show, and he has made headline after headline after headline, primarily because he called out Curtly Ambrose. Now, what I'm going to say to people, first things first, before I get into this and properly chew this one up. A lot of you have fallen for the clickbait headlines. On our handle, I kept saying to people who kept talking about the situation, I kept saying, have you actually watched the video? Did you watch everything that Chris actually said? Or have you read the headline on ESPN Cricket Info? Or did you read the headline on Crick Buzz? Or did you read the headline on your local newspaper? Or did you hear the headline on the radio station? Or did you listen to what Sportsmax said? Or whatever it might be, depending on where you live in the world. How many people went and watched all of the video and interview that Chris Gayle did for themselves and formulated their own opinion, looking at the full context of what Chris Gayle said? I watched it all. And what I did before recording this video is I picked out a few of the salient points that Chris Gayle was making. I'm going to just read them to you now, and then I'm going to try dissect and chop this up. Chris Gayle said, "I've seen a lot of negativity in the press from a lot of the past players. They don't support the team. We're heading into a World Cup. We should be having full support from our past players. They've represented West Indies in the past, so why do they not want us to do well?" Now, this is Chris's perspective. I'm not saying that Chris is 100% correct, but this is Chris's perspective of what he sees in the media. What I will say is my perspective is that, yes, a lot of the past players seem to almost relish cussing out West Indies. Same thing Jason Holder was talking about at the start of this year. They run to cuss out the West Indies, and it's a struggle to say anything positive. Chris then said, "This is not a good look to see so many of our past players being negative before a World Cup starts." So fine, that was the context. Before he even mentioned Curtly Ambrose's name, he put the whole thing in the context of the past players are not helpful. It was the same thing Jason Holder said. Some of you right now must be scrambling going, Jason Holder said that. Yeah, he said that. You lot must not be students of West Indies cricket. You ain't really studying anything. And what I want to know is, if this is the first time you realise Jason Holder said that, and if it's not the first time, and you knew he said it when he said it, how comes you didn't cuss him out? Now, I would level the charge at people that the reason why people rush to cuss Chris out is because Chris doesn't meet the respectable standards, whatever that means. He doesn't reach the respectable standards of what it means to be a West Indies cricketer. He's too brash. He's too bossy. He's too bold. He talks about himself in the third person. He loves the party lifestyle. All of that's true. That doesn't mean make his points any less valid, though. That doesn't mean he can't cuss out. That don't mean he can't criticize. That don't mean his criticisms aren't correct. because how he lives his lifestyle, which I think is a big problem for some people, both outside the Caribbean and within the Caribbean, I think causes them to criticize Chris Gayle and not look at what he's actually trying to say. So anyways, then Chris continued. He said, when I broke into the West Indies team, I had high respect for Curtly Ambrose. I looked up to Curtly Ambrose. And then he says, but what does Curtly Ambrose have against me? And obviously then goes on to say how he don't respect him no more and he's finished with him. Now I'm going to pause there as well, because I think I'm going to, over the summer when West Indies were playing cricket, Curtly Ambrose was on comms for some of those games. And I noticed on comms that he was quite critical of Chris Gayle on comms as well. That I'm not saying he doesn't have to be, by the way, or that he's not allowed to be. I'm just saying I noticed it on commentary that Curtly was quite critical of Chris Gayle during the summer series of T20 games he played. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is I think people have looked at what Chris has said and assumed that this is purely in response to what Curtly Ambrose said on Mason and Guess about Chris isn't an automatic choice, which I think is valid. I think that's valid, by the way. I'm not critical of Curtly making that point, but I think people who have rushed to criticize Chris Gayle assume that Chris is responding purely to what Curtly recently said on Mason and Guess, whereas I'm telling you that I think that what Chris is actually pointing out is that this is the straw that broke the camel's back, and now he's saying, now I'm speaking out because I've had enough. So I don't think it's purely in response to that one thing that Curtly said on Mason and Guess, and whether Curtly was right or not right or whatever is almost irrelevant to me. I think Chris is talking about a process of past players in general, and also earlier in the summer when Curtly was critical of Chris Gayle on TV. So I think this is in response to that. Anyway, Chris continues, stop being negative. Past players support the team. We've won this competition twice and we're going for a third trophy. But then Chris said this. He said, this isn't just about me. He actually said that. He said, this isn't just about me. He said, I'm a senior player in the West Indies team, and we've got young players in there trying to make their way who are coming up to me saying, why are people being so critical of us in the press? So Chris said, I'm speaking for them as well. But when you see the clickbait headlines, you never see that. You never saw that line. Never saw that line on the clickbait. You never saw anybody put, Chris Gayle says that as senior player, he's looking out for the youngsters in the side and he's speaking out against the criticism. And I never saw that. I never saw nobody mention that quote. Don't fall for clickbait, people. Don't, by all means, criticize Chris Gayle if you want to criticize Chris Gayle, but go look at the entire context of what was being said. Then Chris carries on and says, I'm not taking any crap from any more senior players. He says, I don't know what's wrong with the past players. They're acting like they didn't once play and weren't in the same position as well. He says, 22 years I've represented West Indies. I'm at the back end of my career and I'm still going to deliver for West Indies. He says, I don't know if people are still jealous that I'm still playing at 42. I pause to let that sink in. Because my thing is this. Criticize Chris Gayle if you want to criticize him. Call him vulgar. Say that he's the reason about everything that's gone wrong for West Indies cricket, which is foolishness, by the way, but whatever. Criticize him if you want. Say is this. Say is that. Say he's disrespectful. Say that you don't like the way he carries himself. Say all of that. But when you say it, make sure you looked at the full context of the entire interview and everything that he said. And then, I've given it all to you, then say to me, you don't understand where Chris Gayle was coming from. Because this is bigger than Curtly Ambrose. Yes, he singled out Curtly Ambrose in parts of what he was saying, but the wider point he was making was about past players in general just cutting out the side whilst the team is 1 week away from a World Cup about to start. And I think at one point he even said, how comes he can't look at any other team and see all their past players cussing out the side as well. He said, what is this? We're trying to win a World Cup. I think Chris Gayle is 100% entitled to say that. You might not like him saying it, but he's entitled to say it. You might not like how he said it, but he's entitled to say it. And actually, this is me speaking for Chris Gayle now. I think a lot of what I picked up from Chris Gayle was frustration that he will always feel, and I think Chris has hinted at this in the past. Chris will always feel that he has never truly got his due in West Indies cricket from West Indian people. He's 8th on our run charts in Test cricket all time. He's 2nd best Test opener in West Indies cricket. Yeah, I said that. He's got 2 Test match triple centuries. He averaged 42 in Test cricket. He played over 100 Test matches. He's got a double century in ODI cricket. He took wickets at 34 in ODI cricket. He averaged 39 in ODI cricket. He's the best T20 batsman of all time. He's West Indies' leading run scorer in ODI cricket. And the way people have spoken about Chris Gayle through his whole career, more so, by the way, in the region from our own people, more than outside the region, the way he gets spoken about, you'd think he'd never done anything in West Indies cricket. And you know why he's spoken about like that? Because people don't like the way Chris carries himself. Because Chris is a man who will speak his mind. If he thinks that you've prodded him enough, he will speak his mind any old way. He don't business. And if you're a West Indian fan, you should have known this from time. About you're suddenly saying now, how can he do this? He's vulgar. What, you don't know Chris Gayle? You don't know him. You haven't been following his career since he was 19 years old. Chris Gayle has been Chris Gayle from day dot. And yet still, when you speak to other players around the West Indies team, who do they say they respect? Chris Gayle. Do you know why? Because he looks out for his team. He looks out for his players. Everybody I've spoken to who plays with Chris Gayle in terms of West Indies context has always said that. But the image of Gayle, which you could say is his own fault, but the image of Gayle that we portray within our region of him in the media is as if he brings nothing to West Indies cricket. And that's what I think he's actually talking about. Yes, he singled out Curtly Ambrose, but he could have singled out any of the past players because Chris will always feel he never truly got his due in West Indies cricket. And I suspect that even though Curtly's comments, and I'll give balance, was Curtly right to say that Chris isn't necessarily the first choice? Of course he was. Was Curtly right to say that maybe Chris can't fire anymore? It's his opinion. He's fair. I disagree. I think Chris is going to fire at the World Cup, but Curtly's within his rights to say that. Was Curtly right to say that Chris has struggled over the summer for West Indies? Yeah, is within his rights to say that. Did Curtly write Chris off completely? No. He said that if Chris fires, we know what he can do. So he didn't actually write Chris off completely. But did he talk about Chris Gayle and focus on Chris Gayle and Chris Gayle not being a certainty for West Indies and cast doubt on him? Yes. Did he cast doubt on Chris Gayle throughout the summer when he was on comms? Yes. Has Chris Gayle had everybody cast, not me by the way, has Chris Gayle had everybody casting doubt on him over the last year? Yes. Has Chris Gayle had people doubting him over the last 5 years? Yes. And before you say no, I could take you straight back to 2019 when he got into the ODI squad before the World Cup and everyone was cussing him out then. I think Chris Gayle is speaking out of full frustration at people not giving him the flowers he feels he deserves. And the reason, and some of you will be like, don't bring up his stats of what he's done in his career because we're talking about the here and the now. But the reason why I bring up his stats and what he's done for West Indies cricket is because it is baffling how we talk about someone who has done so much. Personally, if it's me and I'm trying to critique Chris Gayle, I'm saying, are there question marks over Chris Gayle? Yes, there are. Am I backing him 100% to come good? Yes, I am. Why? Because he's done it all the time in West Indies cricket. And deep down, that's what I think Chris is asking for. Back me. Back me. Why? Because I've always produced. How do we know? Because his record says so. We aren't. What did Jason Holder say? Let me find the line again from Jason Holder. Let me find this line. Jason Holder, who none of you criticized when he said it. Let me find the line again. Here we go. Here we go. As a society in the Caribbean, we find it so easy to criticize, and we always know the problem. But when asked a solution, it's mind-boggling. These people always struggle to find the solutions, Holder declared. I feel the former legend's comments on West Indies cricket 99% of the time are negative. And when there's an opportunity for them to encourage players, it's like they're trying to pick their teeth to find the words. That's the respected Jason Holder saying that. The disrespected Chris Gayle basically said that as well. So what do we do now? At the end of the day, my whole thing is this. I'm not really too bothered by Chris Gayle versus Curtly Ambrose. Yes, that's what I've called the video, because that's what everyone's talking about. But I'm not too bothered by that. My thing is, West Indies are about to chase the three-peat. We're about to try and go for a record third consecutive win of the T20 World Cup. And if you followed West Indies cricket in our media, if you listened to the radio stations, you'd think we were some waste team that has no chance. And I think that's what the players are getting on about. Name another team, name another region where the people don't really back the side and they look for the negatives before they look for any positive whatsoever. But you see me, I'm backing my team with chest because I'm a West Indian male. I'm a Caribbean male. Forget male, I'm a Caribbean person. I'm Jamaican born and bred. Forget whether that relates to Chris Gayle. I'm back in the West Indies. Now, what I will say is this, though, as I try and wrap this up, because I see the 20-minute mark, is the other subtext to what's going on is there's a bit of a play in the Caribbean media, West Indies media, to try and say that the players are creating like a siege mentality against the media. And this all stemmed from the fact that when Pollard was asked a question this week, sorry, I need a bit of juice there. When Pollard was asked a question this week, he dead batted it and cussed off the journalist. I think it's Brandon Corlett in Guyana. He cussed him out and basically said, every time you come on these press conferences, you ask me about selection, about this player, about that player. And Pollard, has journalists in the Caribbean, some have criticised Pollard, and I even watched a Sportsmax video today where they're like, the West Indies team are trying to create a narrative where they try and make it out like the media's against them and they want positive vibes only. But I don't see it like that. What I see it as, because I've been in lots of those press conferences over the last 6-7 months, and I kind of make Pollard right in some of what he's saying. At the end of the day, the players aren't selectors. Let me repeat that again for those who can't hear at the back and down the sides. The players aren't selectors. So why in a press conference you're going to say to a player, what do you think about this selection and why this player is missing? Isn't that for the chairman of selectors to talk about? Isn't that for the head coach to talk about? So when Nicholas Pooran then had his press conference the day after Pollard, Pooran rightly said, we aren't selectors. We're here to play and win the World Cup. So stop asking us about who's not here and who wasn't selected and who's in this, because we have no say on it. Pollard's take on it was, I answer your questions on selection and the squad is still the squad. So what do you want me to do? And I make the players right. I make the players right on that. Now, they framed it as, you, man, the press, are always coming with negativity. So they're framing it in the context of you're forever looking for what I would call the clickbait headline. You're looking for the draw out. Oh, Pollard said this about selection. Now you've got a headline. Now everyone's flocking. Whereas Pollard's taken it and Pooran's take on it was, stop asking us about that, though. What's that got to do with us? You think if I've got Nicholas Pooran in a press conference and I got a chance to ask him a question, I'm wasting my question on what does he think about selection? What's Nicholas Pooran supposed to do about that? That can't help me. What I want to know is, Nicholas, how's your form? Obviously, you sucked in IPL. What are you going to do about it? Why would I waste a question on why do you think Jason Holder's not in the squad? What the hell does Nicholas Pooran have to do with that? And so this is me saying to the Caribbean media, do better, though. You got to do better. And yes, you could say that Pollard is brash. Pollard doesn't take any prisoners, but we've known this. We've known this. He's not going to change. Pollard don't take no prisoners. And actually, Pollard calls it as he sees it. And that's what people are actually upset about, that Pollard ain't going to play the game. If he thinks something is fuckery, he's going to say it's fuckery. Simple. And actually, the same with Chris Gayle. And maybe that's why these players wind some of you lot up, because they will call out fuckery if they see it. Sorry to swear, but it is what it is, you know. That said, the press, you're not there to be cheerleaders. So I also hear what the press are saying. You're not there to cheer the team on. You're not there to only give them positive vibes. So I hear that. But you can scrutinize. But surely, if you are trained as a professional in the media, what you're scrutinizing has to be to the right people. You can't scrutinize selection by asking the vice captain about it, because he can't affect that. You scrutinize selection by asking the head coach or asking the chairman of selectors, preferably. So really, the critique I've got here for the press is no one's out to get you. It's not Cricket West Indies versus the media. You lot aren't victims. Some of you just aren't good at your job. Yeah, how about that? You're just not that good at your job. I'm on that smoke today. It's the 14th of October. West Indies begin their World Cup campaign in about a week, I think. Yeah, just under a week. We don't have to give them 100% support if you're in the media. We don't have to. Like I say, we're not cheerleaders. But we could try and do better than just trying to look for negativity. Wait for the World Cup to start. You want to run the negative headlines? Wait for the World Cup to start. The squad's done picked now. Wait for the World Cup to start and wait to see if the team performs or doesn't perform. And you see if they don't perform and you want to cuss out, innit? But the competition ain't even started, and I'm struggling to find one positive thing anybody's reporting on. And that's what I think the players are unhappy about. I've been Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. That's been the Rum Shot Diaries Cuss Out session. I'm not asking you to agree with me. If you've been watching this series and you know what I'm like, you know what I'm like. I'll come with that same smoke that Chris Gayle comes with. But you know what I'm like. Hit me up in the comments. If you follow the series, you know I reply to every single comment. You don't have to agree with me. I won't necessarily agree with you, but I will reply. I will engage. Like the video, subscribe, share it with your peoples. Tell them I'm a goddamn fool. Come cuss me out. That's the whole point of the cuss out sessions. But like I say, I've been Machel St. Patrick Hewitt. If you've got a little bit of change, I beg, support the Caribbean Cricket Podcast and what we're going to do. We may be shutting down this operation after the World Cup. That's the plan at the moment, but with your help we might be able to avoid that. Thanks for listening. See you soon with another cuss out video.